Hey guys, what's going on? It is Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to talk about the hardest hitting abilities, the biggest multipliers on rare skills inside the game. What are the 10 hardest hitting abilities inside Raid Shadow Legends in the rare category? I'll duplicate this video in Epic and Legendary if you guys want me to go ahead and do so. Two quick mentions. Number one, shout out to Adam Maxis, who translated this from Russian, posted it on Reddit a month ago. I used his spreadsheet when actually assessing these multipliers. That way it wasn't just guesswork. And the other kind of disclaimer here, guys, is know that, multipliers aren't everything in this game. There's also a lot to be said with debuffs, with whatever else a champion brings to the table other than just sheer damage, even from your nukers. And on top of that, it does bear mentioning that their base attack is going to matter as well here, because if you have a great multiplier but a very low base attack, well, it's going to be hard to scale that ability and get the most out of the multiplier that is already high. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the top 10 hardest hitting rare champion nuking abilities, AoE, starting with number 10. So coming in at number 10 is Veteran. Now, Veteran is a Void Affinity champion. He's kind of a weird champion because he does scale off of defense and attack, and then also off of defense and HP, but mainly defense. Coming in at number 10 is Massacre. Massacre attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a block buff debuff for 1 turn. Damage increases according to this champion's max HP. So you build him out with a high max HP, you're going to get a multiplier of 0.2 based on HP on this ability, and then accounting for all of their defense. So defense plus 0.2 of their HP is Massacre, and Massacre again can do a decent amount of damage here, well, 10th compared to these other abilities we're going to be talking about today. It's a nice AoE ability, and having that 60% chance when booked of landing that block buffs is great as well. And then the last thing I'll mention is extra kudos to Veteran and all the champions on this list that have a 3-turn cooldown again when booked here, because these hard-hitting nuking abilities are better when you can use them more often, right? So every 3 turns is what we're looking for here in these abilities. Let's move on to number 9. Next up is Knight Revenant champion, Magic Affinity Executioner. Executioner has a really decent A2 here, attacks all enemies, decrease the turn meter by 20%, and then has a 75% chance when booked of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns on all enemies. This scales a 2 off of attack, a 2 multiplier on attack, and a 2.4 multiplier off of his defense as well. And you can see his base defense is actually pretty high, so I would go ahead and focus on building my Executioner with higher defense for that reason. This is a pretty hard-hitting ability, not nearly as hard as we get to these, other champions at the top of this list, but still Executioner with the turn meter there as well, with the decreased speed. I think that he is often an unsung champion when we talk about rare debuffers in the early to mid game. Next up is Cold Heart, Dark Elf, obviously Void Affinity champion. We all know about her Heartseeker ability. That would probably be the hardest hitting rare ability overall, but it's not an AoE. But her 3-turn AoE, Art of Pain, on her A2 is an AoE, and that comes in at a 3.3 attack multiplier. So not bad at all. The Art of Pain ability actually puts out a decent amount of damage, actually more than decent, a real respectable amount of damage, to where you can consider Cold Heart not only one of the best turn meter manipulators, totally depleting a target's turn meter against bosses, putting out millions of damage oftentimes on her A3, but also on her A2, very, very respectable, doing significant damage, around looking at 30 to 40k damage in level 20 dungeons, obviously depending greatly on how you have all these champions geared out. That's how much my Cold Heart does, I should say, on her A2. So that is Cold Heart. Coming in at number 7 is Elaine. So Elaine has an interesting ability on her A3. It's Valley of Death. Now, Valley of Death only has a 1.9 attack multiplier, obviously far less than Executioner, than Cold Heart as well. However, it is a 2-time hitter, so I'm gonna go ahead and just pretend that it's a 1-time hitter and put her a little bit above Cold Heart in terms of the overall nuke potential of Elaine. Obviously, she brings a lot of other utility to the table. If you have any champion that attacks all enemies 2 times or multiple times, even 3 times, they're very, very good in stun sets and kind of bring a lot to the table in that regard as well. Or if they have a debuff, they get a double chance of placing it. With all that said, Elaine is definitely still a respectable nuker again on a 3-turn cooldown on Valley of Death, hitting everybody 2 times with 1.9 multiplier. Coming in at number 6 is Fleshmonger. Fleshmonger is a Skinwalker champion. Now his A3 is incredibly good, Tornado Cleaver. However, it is a 4-turn cooldown. If this ability was on a 3-turn cooldown, he would be an extremely more popular and viable rare champion inside this game, but you can't take away from the multipliers. They're still there. It's a 3.7 attack multiplier on his A3 with the decreased defense, granted only a 75% chance. Again, if this was on a 3-turn cooldown, he would go from being, you know, maybe a little bit underrated, kind of a hidden gem type champion that you can have success with, to just a really popular name, kind of like War Maiden, who we'll talk about in just a moment here. But he does have a granted extra turn, kind of a self-buffing ability on his A2, and he has a one enemy 3 times on the A1 as well. So that's Fleshmonger. Next up is actually Thill, guys. She has a 4.1 multiplier on Divine Blades. So her base attack is a little bit lower than Kale's and Elaine's. So for that reason, that should be, you know, at least taken into consideration here. But there is a pretty nasty bite behind this Divine Blades ability. Again, a 4.1 multiplier on an AoE on a 3-turn cooldown. That is Thill. Next up is Bellow, guys. So Bellow is one of these unique champions that can be built as a support. You can put him in a stun set. He can be your CC champion. He can be your debuffer. He can also be your nuker. So he can really do it all. That's why he's one of the most popular rare champions in the game. He's Void Affinity, Ogre and Tribes champion. He has an AoE on every single attack. So let's talk about the power of all of his AoEs. His hardest hitting AoE is his A2. Mighty Bellow attacks all enemies on a 3-turn cooldown, has the 75% chance when booked of placing a 15% decreased speed. This is a 4.2 multiplier on the Mighty Bellow. Again, the hardest hitting of his 3 abilities, not his A3. Bowl Over attacks all enemies, 75% chance of placing a decreased attack or 100% chance when booked. Also has a 100% chance of placing a decreased defense, the weak version, for 2 turns. This is a 3.6 multiplier on his A3 on a 4-turn cooldown. So again, this is a 4.2 on the A2, a 3.6 on the A1, and the multiplier on the, on the A3, and the multiplier on the A1 is Frazzle, attacks all enemies. It is a 2.6 multiplier, has a 30% chance of placing a block cooldown skills debuff. So, you know, 4.2, 3.6, and 2.6, that's really, really solid in terms of potential viable nukage from Bellow. Again, worth noting that his A2 is the one that you want to go with if you want to land those, you know, the most amount of damage in one shot. That's Bellow. Alright guys, moving into the top 3, we have Gallic here. Gallic on his A2 is an AoE, attacks all enemies, has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, and then places an increased speed buff on this champion for 2 turns. It does all that on the Hellraiser ability on a 3-turn cooldown, and you can damage it out if you want to burn a bunch of books on it as well, all with a 4.5 attack multiplier on this. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that starting champion Gallic has just an insane multiplier here for a rare champion on his AoE nuke. So again, that's a 4.5 attack multiplier. He also has a 4-time at random here on his A3, and he has a 1 enemy 2 times on his A1. So wow, Gallic coming in top 3. Coming in at number 2 is Kale. So Kale on his, well, you guys know his poison, the big poison on A3, the small poison on the A1. He has the Acid Rain ability, again, 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has an extra 15% chance of placing a critical hit, fills the turn meter of this champion by 25% for each enemy killed. Acid Rain, definitely the best ability out of any of the starting champions inside this game, well, at least it is in my opinion. It also has the highest attack multiplier on it at a 4.65 multiplier on Acid Rain. Again, he also has a pretty decent base attack to at 1,200. So Kale definitely coming through at number 2 with one of the hardest hitting abilities in an AoE nuker inside all of rare champions in the game. That's right, coming in at number 1 is War Maiden, an incredibly free-to-play accessible champion in this game. She can be farmed easily in campaign, and boy is she good. In case you missed my guide on War Maiden that I put out about a month ago, I'll link it in the description for you guys, along with some guides on some of these other champions that we talked about today. But honestly guys, War Maiden, on her A3, her big money ability, 3-turn cooldown, Crumbling Blast, decreased defense, big version on every enemy, 100% chance. But it also has a 5.1 attack multiplier, the only rare champion with an AoE attack, nuking attack that is 5 or greater at 5.1. She also has a pretty high base attack at 1321, again for a rare champion, for an AoE rare champion. So not only does it have the strongest debuff, especially for dungeon waves in the game with a decreased defense on a 3-turn cooldown, it is also an incredibly hard-hitting ability with a 5.1 multiplier. And then she has an extra attack chance on opportunity strikes, single target, and of course a single target with the weak version of poison on her ferocious attack A1 ability. So there you have it guys, that is it. Those are the 10 hardest hitting AoE nuking abilities in rare champions inside the game. Again, let me know if you want me to make another list for epic and legendary champions. I found this video fun. I find these skills just to check out the multipliers behind them, even though we discussed it does not mean everything. Obviously artifacts and what else they're bringing to the table, masteries, their base stats, all these things go into what makes a champion hit hard. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy the content here, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, and as always, take care guys.